Hello, hello. Welcome to episode 23 of the Watching Privacy Show, last one of the year, grand finale, some would say. Brett and Raju with us, and let's dive in. We got a couple stories to hit on that we'll cover, and then I think we'll go into a little bit more of a kind of year recap and what we kind of see going ahead. So, Raju's favorite accessory for the holidays, Airtags, has got a little update for our Android friends. Basically, they released an app that Android users can use. And by use, I use that term pretty loosely because I'm not sure this app really has a lot of functionality, to be honest. Based on what I read, I don't have an Android phone, so I didn't test it out or play with it too much. But basically, the purpose of the app, from my understanding, was that it will help you identify if you are being tracked with AirTags. It's not so much that Android users can use AirTags for themselves, and it doesn't have like the same level of like operating system bacon that it has on iOS, so it doesn't run in the background. And there's some limitations, I think, in terms of functionality there. But overall, would anybody actually even install this? Is this even a? I mean, I guess it's there, but it seemed kind of short-sighted. Did you guys see anything different, or am I right that this is just kind of a pointless app for the most part that nobody will ever install?
It's a. I see it as a tracker to track trackers. That's the whole purpose of the app, I guess. I don't have much. That's about it. I don't see the point.
A tracker to track trackers. Oh my! I mean, that pretty much does say it all. All right. Let me pose it. Maybe take it from a different perspective. Is this an attempt to try to fix errors or things that weren't thought of before they released these, to try to make up for the things that were shortcomings in the initial release?
I think that's an important point you make, Brent. This is consistent with the trend we have seen. Create a problem, offer a solution. Do ads, offer an ad-free subscription model. Create a tracker, right? Offer an alternative, right? So all of these, there is a consistency to these. They may not have planned this, but certainly, it is evolving that way. So, yeah, I think these are things that they may not have foreseen, and I won't be surprised if they launch and extend this app to even attract Android users. The reason I see Apple going down that path is this basically provides a new way to track additional users that are not on their platform and sell more AirTags, where I guess their margin, if I had to guess, their margin on their accessories is significantly higher than margin on their main products. So the price
And
are
a
more
low entry
expensive than
point
the
too.
bigger.
So I
Low
think
entry
these
point.
AirTags have been, I'm pretty sure, probably a top holiday seller because you can buy them for like 20, $30 for like stocking stuffers or whatever. I think the 4-pack has been discounted down to like 75, $80 off of like 100, $110. So pretty aggressive on the pricing there. And yeah, I mean, like Roger said, it seems kind of short-sighted to make the app so limited in functionality because you'd rather just give Android users the ability to do this. But I mean, I I think Apple's they gotta figure this out at some point. I mean, Apple Music, they eventually went to Android, and so a lot of their services that they want to make money on, I think they'll realize that. I mean, why not make Android money too instead of only iOS money? Even if it gives them a quote limited user experience, which is what they go for. But at the end of the day, if they build a good enough app that works on Android, then people will want to come to Apple and be like, "There's more where that came from." So maybe it is just a V1, but I don't know anybody that would download this app proactively just to open it up every once in a while and then click on scan and then basically see if something is scanning you at that point in time. Like it just seems like a lot of effort that nobody would ever actually do.
And if it wasn't done already, uh, next Google I/O, you'll probably see G tags. Why not? Google will take that as an opportunity and include that in there, and I'm sure they'll offer an app in there for iOS as well.
Yeah.
So we are the ones that are losing.
Yeah. I
Again,
don't
it
think these things
opens
are
a.
rocket science to make. And
Yeah, and this is a new can of worms that Apple opened with AirTag. Tile was there, but it wasn't popular, and I was glad it wasn't very popular. but Apple opened a new can of worms. And as I said earlier, yeah, 3 years down the lane, 5 years down the lane, what are the implications? I'm worried about those.
Yeah.
I,
Uh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, if this feels like, wow, oh, this shot. Um, it feels like privacy is definitely the biggest battleground out there between the titans that none of them has hegemony for, not yet at least. So it feels like, they're all trying to figure out how do they grab the con, so to speak. So, one move by this company is going to cause 4 or 5 moves by the other big guys. And I just don't know. Like, we have to look at everything. It feels like every move that's being made around privacy is more around power and being able to have more say and control over how privacy is carried out. And as long as a company feels like we can make this move and we can capture kind of the control, that's going to be what happens. And we're like the tip of the iceberg for this stuff, and it's going to be really fascinating to see developments that happen this year. What do they lead to next year? I know we're going to talk about that later, but it just
Yeah,
feels like that's all that's going on here.
yeah, it's a bummer because the development for me, I mean, as a user and as a well wisher of Apple, because they are the most privacy friendly company out there among these this big tech, that you know they lost trust. I mean, I lost trusting Apple this year. That has been the development for me as a consumer. Of course, Airtags is an important part. Some of their moves in advertising and is a big part of it, because I don't believe that advertising and privacy go hand in hand. So there is a movement in there, but there is money in there as well that Apple doesn't. Does Apple has to justify because of the valuation? It's almost heading to a 3 trillion valuation out there. So they have to justify, and they have to figure out bigger buckets where a trillion there, a trillion here has to be added, and advertising is that market. So they are being tempted or pulled into it. So 2021, I believe, is a year. I see it as a year where, from an angle, Apple lost its a thing on privacy, and at least it's a starting point.
I'm not sure. It's like, I mean, losing their trust on privacy is one thing, but at the end of the day, they just have to be not as evil as the next guy. And if they're just seen as the least evil, which you kind of have a lot of margin on, then people like you would still default to them because they're not the worst of the bunch, right? So then it's like you're leaving money on the table by being too privacy forward or too moral, and you basically need to push the line a little bit more until you. It's going to take a long way to get to Google, Amazon, Facebook levels, and so whatever trust they've built up, they're just kind of moving the goalposts a little bit because you're not losing anything. I mean, if you're privacy centric and you lose trust in Apple, where are you going? You're staying with Apple still. So
Yeah, I think, but then they had the opportunity, and they still have that opportunity to basically define what privacy centric looks like, and take the industry in a direction. And Apple has that muzzle to take the industry in a direction where privacy can be important and still execute business models that protect the end user. And Apple is still way ahead there, but they get to, they should have, gone, ran with it. So I still trust them. Just that, them getting into advertising and getting into the service surveillance business is not going to be helping that cause.
Almost feels like everybody's trying to find the right formula, the mix between wanting to be, or at least display privacy and maybe even execute privacy, but they also have to make money. And the more reliant you are on ads, so like a Facebook or a Google, it's a harder line to try to draw. Whereas Apple are not reliant at all on ads. They sell stuff, and people love it. So they have more leniency in their business to actually come down more heavy on the privacy side than these other guys whose total business is dependent on ads and they need data for that. So Apple should be the leader. They should be a big time leader. They shouldn't even have to try to find that line on the lower end because they got the higher ground. They're selling us stuff. So I agree that they are the leader, but I also agree that they did take a few steps back because they shouldn't feel pressed about selling ads or selling services that are geared towards data, totally geared towards it.
Mm-hmm.
But they did take a couple of steps back, in my opinion, at least. Even while they rolled out this privacy thing that they really did roll out, that kicked this all off.
Good segue, Brent, because I think the privacy edition is in iOS 15.2 is kind of a sign of that one step forward, maybe two steps backwards kind of mentality. So if you updated your phone or your iPad, basically, what you got to do is, I was kind of confused. It was off by default, at least when I updated my phone. So I had to go into, my iPhone settings, go down to privacy, and then at the very bottom, there's like an option for turning on this app privacy report. And once you turn it on, basically nothing will display there because it hasn't collected any information yet. But if you let it run for about a day or maybe, honestly, probably a day is enough for it to show you an insane amount of information that is discomforting. And I think it's good that at least there's transparency in what's happening behind the scenes because a lot is happening behind the scenes. And so there's a couple sections in the app privacy report. The first half, I believe, is something along the lines of like which apps are accessing data on your phone. So if something is accessing contacts or something is accessing your location. And then the second half of it is all about the services that applications are contacting. So all of the domains and websites that are being connected to that you would have no idea. So let's say you pop open, I don't know, your news application, whatever you use, CNN, whatever it is. You open the app up and all the connections for ads and tracking and analytics, all of those are being pinged in the background, and you would normally have no idea. At least on a desktop, we've talked about this before, you can get an ad blocker. You can probably dig into seeing all the connections a website is making. But when you talk about mobile apps, especially on the iPhone, there was never any visibility into this kind of connections that applications were making. And so we threw a couple screenshots up on it where it basically talks about appmeasurement.com, which is basically I believe a Google thing, right? Where all these analytics are being connected to, and every app you can see, Wise, NBA, Nest, Tesla, Google Maps, everything is tapping into it. In-app check for Apple, not super clear what it is. I kind of wish that if it was an Apple domain, it would tell you what it's connecting to, like at least from their own sake. But go ahead, Raju.
I think there is one other screenshot out there that provides a good description on what app privacy does. And as soon as you mentioned about app privacy yesterday, I installed it and started to monitor it. And then if you look at these two screenshots, that actually provides a good summary on what, or at least a couple of aspects out there. If you look at appmeasurement.com, think of it like Google Analytics for mobile apps. So first, I highly recommend app privacy report. It's a very, very strong feature out there. That's a good step forward, and it gives us visibility into what apps are contacting what sites, and you can even drill down into what other subsites they're reaching out to and whatnot. But
Hey,
go ahead, Brett.
Go ahead, Brett. No, I want to address some of the comments, but why don't you finish up and then we'll bring those.
Sure. So if you look at this particular thing, like the app measurement domain, and Apple conveniently provides that description saying this domain may be following you across multiple apps and websites to combine your activity into a profile. That's a Google site. Because it is Google Tracker embedded in all of these apps, they know the app user activity and whatnot. But then even a Google app checks into inappcheck.itunes.apple.com. What this is not. This is something I don't think even Google has control over. This is Apple tracking every single app that is opened on your phone, how much time you're using, how many times you're launching. All of that information goes back to Apple. So Apple knows about you, your phone. Of course, it knows about your device. It knows about every single app you open, how much time you spend on, how many days, and that's how it's able to provide all the reports to the developers and whatnot. So one, I really like that Apple is providing all this information and being honest about it, and as it conveniently provides a description below that says it could indicate that the domain is combining your activity into a profile. Even in Apple's case, that's exactly what Apple is doing, where it is combining all the information across all users, across all your domains, and into that. And this is where it's a good step forward that they are exposing this information. I also see it as a step backward because they are profiling the same thing, and you can assume that Android or Google is doing the same in Android as well. So this is where people will be surprised at the amount of information that is being tracked, including every single app you open and also every single URL that particular app calls.
Yeah, I would say the biggest buster here is like showing people is one thing, but there should just be an ability to tap and say block. It's crazy not to have that. Like you're gonna show me all this stuff and do it, but like if you can't take an action on it, then it's just kind of like, well, what am I supposed to do here? Like I see it and I'm kind of just gotta go with it. And I was just checking on my phone right now too. That I thought that in-app check would be like, when you first set up a phone, it asks you if you want to like share analytics data with Apple to like make the phone better. And then you have a second option of sharing analytics data with developers to make it better. And I know I had both of those off, but I was just double checking the settings, but it's still connecting to that same website. So there's some other, let's call it maybe potentially nefarious reason that is being used in order for them to get these updates every single time. And it could be some subscription thing. It could be, a push notification server or some other weird technical, I guess if we give them the benefit of the doubt. But like what you mentioned at the beginning of the show, it's like those brand withdrawals in terms of trust. You can't give them that benefit of the doubt anymore. And it's just mind-blowing to me that Apple wouldn't go out of its way to basically identify, let's say, the top like 50 domains that apps connect, because there's probably the 50 that are mostly app analytics platforms, Apple, Google, big ones, and just tell us like in plain English to a normal user, this is what this website and domain is using. But the reason for that lack of transparency, or only half transparency in this case, is either they don't want you to know, or it's impossible to really know what's happening. Because once the information gets to whatever endpoint it's going to, that service can do whatever it wants with that payload of data, basically, and you have no idea what is actually being sent. All you know is a ping is going out. What data is being sent, there's no transparency on that. So I would call this like a pretty half-baked feature. If they were serious about it, this would get iterated upon a lot better over future updates, and hopefully it does. But I would say the lack of splash when they kind of announced this update, and the lack of on by default, or a lot of times when you like update your phone to a new version, even if it's a minor version, if there's a new killer feature, they'll have like a push notification for it, or like tips, or like there's some in phone way of notifying you about a big update. Like when group FaceTime calls came out, that was like a big thing, and they like pushed it within the phone, but here they're not doing it, and either probably because they think a lot of people don't care, or some reason, but not a good one in my opinion. So hopefully this gets a lot better over time, but I don't know. I say it's a coin toss, if at best.
Let me bring in a couple of these comments and questions. Let's see, Scott. Yeah, I think we're all agreeing on this. Companies need to keep their privacy info easy to find and easy to read and easy to act on, as Tejas just illustrated. What do you think is the reason, or do you see, let's say, going forward, do you see next year as a year that this starts to really happen? Like companies do start to come clean, be more transparent, and make it easier for consumers to have more control over their privacy?
What world are you living in, Brent?
there are trillions of dollars riding at stake, and there are too many players that are whose paychecks are dependent on them not being user friendly.
Yeah, including I would say the basically like the lawmakers you need to in order to get this stuff passed and regulated. If their pockets are being lined as well, it's very hard to make that work. But yeah,
That's where I think the tide has to turn, and I'm confident it'll turn over the coming years, where there is going to be a pushback, and privacy will become a key part of it. And people have been discussing about it. It has become a very small voice to now becoming a common voice. It is now in the periphery, and hope that becomes the main capability. And it'll probably take a few years for that to happen.
I wanted to go and thanks Scott for throwing that comment in there. My buddy Sven is asking, do we know of X Privacy Lua on Android mobile phones? An amazing privacy tool. I haven't heard of it. Have either of you?
No, me either.
I've heard of it before. I saw it on some forum or something somewhere, but as a non-Android user, I didn't really dig into it. But from my understanding, it was something along the lines of like kind of like a enhanced privacy manager for Android. I mean, I would say the pros and cons of Android are there. I mean, the pro is definitely tools like this where you get that granular level of control that iOS won't allow you to have. On the flip side of it, you can get taken advantage of a lot, but you can definitely lock down your phone, I think, to an extent using these kinds of third-party tools and a lot more custom developed projects. So it's a good thing to know. X Privacy Lua, yeah. I think I mean, going forward, I think we'll have make a good little website that has a list of all these tools and kind of descriptions for things. And I wouldn't really call them like endorsements or whatever, but at least a place to start researching on your own. Because at the end of the day, no matter what somebody endorses, you still got to read into it on your own and figure out if it's worthwhile. But going back to what Scott was saying earlier too about keeping that privacy information easy to find and easy to read, like there's such a small subset of people that actually would go out searching for privacy information that like let's say you have a 100% user base, maybe 3 or 5% are looking for this privacy information and would maybe make a decision based on that or feel some type of way. And it's like for those small 3 to 5%, you might as well make that. I guess companies either calculate, is it worth making a clean and easy to read privacy website for this 3 to 5% and being a little bit transparent, or is it just not worth the effort? And eventually they'll either, if I bury it, they'll give up and use the service anyway, or just not, which they weren't going to do anyway if they had read it more clearly. But I'm not sure, like it seems like a very limited upside for this kind of thing because if the company is not doing something good, like sharing your data, making it easy to find and easy to read is not in their best interest. So they're not going to probably invest in, a lawyer or a marketer to like clean up this website and make it a lot more user friendly, like their landing page might be. So I'm not sure that ever really happens. Like it's hard. Like it's got to be in a company's DNA and stuff like that. And I'm not sure. I mean, there's always like legalese that has to happen and like, the actual terms and conditions and stuff. But most companies will have at least some sort of landing page about privacy that is typically usually pretty vague. And then it's like, oh, click on our privacy policy to learn more. And then you get like a million words that you can't read or like do anything with and figure out. And that ends up being what you have. So yeah, I'm hoping people can see that it's a very small thing to do that would have an outsized impact of trust. Because honestly, even if a company is, full-blown advertising model, whatever, I accept it. Just tell me straight up. Tell me what you're doing, and I'll probably trust you a little bit more than if you hide it, and then I probably won't use the service at all. So I don't know. That's kind of, hopefully it gets better, but I'm not really sure.
I'm going to subscribe to the 3E policy because if you make it easy to find, that's good. If you make it easy to read, that's better. But if you don't make it easy to act on, what good are the other E's?
Yeah, easy to act on sucks because I mean, I like usually at the end of the year, I'll like dig out like old accounts or random things and start closing stuff down. And you start searching how to like remove yourself from these privacy policies. And then, like on the thing, I mean, I can tell you my personal pet peeve on that one is you'll look through a privacy policy and say, oh, okay, to delete your information, reach out to our team and we'll process your request or whatever. And then it's like not even the email address listed. Like No form online, no nothing like that. No easy way to do it where it already tags it. It's email this email address. The email address itself won't even be hyperlinked because they want to create such a stupid dark pattern to like not let you just simply click on the hyperlink, just compose the email. And it's just like very small things like that that will just like, you know, death by a thousand cuts. If I have to do this 100 times, I'm going to give up and be like, screw it, whatever. I just give up and let it go. So it takes a good amount of, I'd say, dedication to get your stuff cleared out. A lot of these tools. There's another one. I was closing an old investment account I had with this app called Betterment. That's like a robo advisor kind of thing. I haven't used it in a long time. And you know, I looked at their terms. I sent them an email. Hey, I want to close my account and delete my information. And they emailed me back and it's like, oh, this is only available for California people. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. I'm from California. It's like, oh, cool. Can you provide proof of residency in California? And I was like, oh, snap, they got me. So I was like, oh, like I, you know, still have my Texas license. Like I literally had this whole like back and forth with them over email. And then finally I was like, look, so you have the ability to delete the information for California folks. And you're telling me that just because I don't live there, you won't just like click the delete button for me. Like that's literally what we're at right now, right? Because it's not some magic rule you have. And they were like, yeah, like unless you can provide proof of something. And then the proof he wanted was like, he was like anything. So I literally registered for like a library, I think, in somewhere in like LA. And got like just created a fake address and did it that way. And I mean, whatever, it is what it is. But like the hoops you have to jump through are just pointless. Like nothing is more irking than services that offer like GDPR or California regulation privacy protections, but then don't extend it everywhere because you know it's not like maybe you don't have to keep it out in the open for people, but you have nothing to lose by if somebody wants to leave your service, just delete their stuff and let them go. Otherwise, you're just gonna piss them off, and I'm gonna put Bitterman on blast on a podcast that's watched by tens of people around the world, right? I mean, anyways, that's my rant for the day.
If Meta can offer an address, they may have a use case here.
I live in the metaverse. I am agnostic to the states.
Speaking of Meta, right?
Oh man, this one's a bad headline, which is also the pot calling the kettle black headline. Meta alerts 50,000 users to targeting by surveillance for hire companies. I'm not sure what they think of themselves, but that's a different story in itself. Maybe their PR guy has a good connect at The Verge who published this. But yeah, basically, I didn't dig into this one too much, but users, including journalists, is that what it says?
Yeah, and human rights activists.
Oh, yeah, that's bad. We're based in more than 100 countries around the world. That's not good at all. I think it was some privacy tool. I lost the site somewhere, but what do you call it? I don't think it's fair for these guys to be calling out other people on surveillance for hire. That's probably you don't even need to read into the detail. I saw the headline and I was like, all right, this sounds, you know, a little suspect for these guys to be making that accusation.
It's like pot calling kettle, surveillance for hire comes. And, you know, that's kind of interesting. But is the net a good thing? Like these 50,000 users now know they're being targeted?
I mean, it seems like I dug into it now here. So targeting, like you mentioned, Brent, journalists, dissidents, critics of authoritarian regimes, families of opposition, human rights activists, basically everybody that a government wouldn't like. So I would imagine some government tie-up that's happened here. Companies are part of a sprawling industry that provides intrusive software tools and surveillance services indiscriminatory to any customer, regardless of who they target or human rights abuses they might enable, wrote Meta's director of threat disruption. I just don't know how you can say that sentence and not say that that's our business model.
I love that title, though.
Like, that seems basically what it is. Yeah, I don't think it's anything new. I think it's just some threat that was there and exposed a few bad apples, and I'm pretty sure it has to do with probably governments not liking certain people and Facebook probably providing that information to some extent because it got out from their from under their wings. So not a very good look in general.
Are we going to see a lot more of these kind of stories where one of these companies tattles on another? And is that just to throw the scent off of them? And look over there. Look what they're doing. It almost feels like we're next year we might see, some of the big guys saying, "Hey, you might want to look over there. Something funny is going on over there. Something that they know they're not a part of that they could, point to."
No,
Because it
I
just
think they feel
feels like this is not a good
they
start.
have a monopoly on sharing that information, and I think they're upset that somebody else got access to it and is using it. It's like if you want that information, you come to us and you talk to us, and we'll figure out a deal. Don't try to find some other way around it. I feel like that's their bigger problem here, not anything else.
It's the same problem they've had with Clearview.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness! So speaking of Clearview, our
Brent's
weekly
favorite
Clearview
company.
segment. If I could bring it up here, there it is. I didn't find this one. This is one that you found, but I'm kind of glad you found it. It kept the streak going. Every week we got to talk about these guys.
Yeah, this is like almost like 6 in a row, I think, at this point. But France is shutting him down. I also saw earlier this morning that I think a couple states in Canada were shutting it down, Alberta, Quebec, and a few others. And so, yeah, nobody really seems to like these guys, and they seem to be doing bad around the world. And other countries are shutting it down, but because the U.S. is their customers, we're going to let them basically run free. I wasn't really sure how this really jurisdictionally works out, right? Like France says they can't use it, but is it like not allowed on French citizens? And then how do you know who's a French citizen on the internet? It seems like it could get muddy, and like maybe it's more of a statement than like anything with teeth. Did you guys get anything else out of it, or is that basically where it stands right now?
I think Clearview is fighting, saying that we don't have any French citizens' information. Now that comes to the point where, provide us the information of your citizens, and we'll double check and give you that's where it's. So
We don't have it now, but we will have it soon. I don't know.
Yeah.
It feels to me the irony. I don't know if it was last week or it was 2 weeks ago, where we had a story about Clearview getting a patent or going for a patent for some piece of technology that they're basically using to collect people's data.
Broadly, I think what you see at a macro level is we see these legislations, the legal and all of those are at the country level, right?
Right.
But you see these services spanning countries. And this is the same problem. I mean, why is Facebook or Twitter or all these companies running into the issue? You have a global algorithm applied to a local need, because the cultural varieties that exist within each of these regions, the preferences, the laws being different. But you have a company that is trying to serve a global need across all cultures, all religions, all preferences, and so you cannot apply the same algorithm across the board worldwide, and that is and therein lies the conflict. Same when you have some legal challenges, you cannot say I have a single algorithm that will work across all legalities. So each country will come in and shut down. This is the one thing that I see as increasingly being prevalent, where the virtual walls will go up between the countries, and we've been saying this for a while. And next year we'll likely go down this path where the legislations will get stricter for every country. So the internet, the golden days of the internet, that may be behind us because of all the abuse of these, or I guess the wild success of these mega big tech is resulting in breaking the internet itself. And that is, you can call that their success, I guess. But it is a sad development, frankly, because of their abuse. We are going in that direction.
Yeah, I think what you said about the worldwide aspect is important, because in that TechCrunch article about Clearview in France basically, applied some consequences based on GDPR violations. And Clearview CEO made a statement, and from the article it says, Clearview AI does not have a place of business in France or the EU. It does not have any customers in France or the EU. It does not undertake any activities that would otherwise mean it is subject to the GDPR. So by being a global company and simply scanning everything online of residents of those countries, you can simply take the shield of, we don't have customers there, we don't have users there, whatever. We're just taking what we have. And I think, honestly, this is probably one of the more slippery slopes with like the rise of like the hype of kind of decentralized web and crypto and the whole that aspect of it, right? If you have these organizations that are running these algorithms, doing things that are not bound by a location, at least Clearview is based in the U.S. If you wanted to sue Clearview, you could do it. They have some jurisdictional like they do have to report to some country wherever you're based out of. But in these decentralized like organizations that are popping up a little bit more, you don't really have any kind of accountability. So if they would just say, "Oh, we're decentralized and we don't have a place of business or whatever," then what do you do, right? Like, I mean, you're kind of just screwed. I honestly am kind of really surprised that somebody like Apple, Facebook, and Google don't just buy like 5 islands off of some place and make it their own country, spend a few $1 billion on some cables, get some connectivity out there, and you don't got to listen to nobody. You're just like in Facebookopolis or Meta, and the metaverse could be the country itself, right? Like,
Metaverse.
it's not a rocket science thing for somebody like Apple with like 100 billion plus in the bank. I think you can buy a few islands and figure out the legalese behind it. It doesn't seem like rocket science. It seems like a lot less headache long run, but maybe they're working on it already.
Do you think we're going to see like we had NATO and all these treaties with multiple countries operating under one kind of thought? Do you think we'll see some sort of a digital privacy based partnerships between countries so that at least this block of countries in this digital treaty, you're going to have to follow these rules that go beyond one country, that go across these multiple members of this digital treaty, maybe even a digital extradition policy, for things that happen over here, but you will have to pay for it over there. Are we getting to that point? Do you see that as something happening?
That will happen. By the time it happens, it's probably too late, usually, and it's likely going to happen. Because what's happening, and this is going to be, this is probably a little more into the economic side of things, where if you look at so-called global companies, why did these companies become so big, like the big tech, right? They have user base that's a large percentage of the user base outside of, say, US, take Facebook and whatnot, right? 3 billion users or some such number out there. The majority of them are outside users. Now, which means they're providing services to various countries, and then what's happening to all the profits? The profits are basically vacuumed up back to US. Do you think EU will like it? Do you think China will like it? Do you think Asia will like it? All of these, they're going to have some restrictions out there saying that you're vacuuming the wealth, cleaning up everything and sending it that way. So everyone will want a share of it, and that is not going to work out. So which means virtual walls will come up between these countries, and privacy, data sharing, all of those will come up. Unfortunately, the legislators don't even know what they're dealing with. They're so clueless. But one thing that I believe worked in 2021 is pretty much the big tech lost political friends and allies in 2021. And which means it is highly likely that next year and beyond we'll see some legislation come up this way. And I actually see a lot of these regions come up with their own firewalls, like China has done, to encourage local companies. That is, we've been saying this for a while. That is likely going to happen because, again, because of the abuse and greed of some of the big tech.
I mean, the other side of that story is instead of relying on these American companies, a lot of these the Chinese companies come in and basically offer the same thing. There was a thing earlier this week, more security related than privacy related, about Huawei having some devices that were spying on basically countries, and just, can't do it. But if they flood the market with a cheaper product that's of equal quality, a lot of these countries will have to figure out, because I think it'll end up being like long-term or short-term pain for a long-term gain, because you do have to make a lot of capital investments in terms of like education and labor and infrastructure and things like that in order to build up those industries locally. And it is a lot cheaper, and I'd say arguably a lot easier to get reelected if you don't spend the money on those kinds of things and you just get a good deal and kind of kick the problem down the road. So yeah, I guess not to go too far deep down economics and politics, but it's messy, but it's all kind of intertwined at the end of the day. Let's see. Well, we got a few minutes left for the last show. I figure we'd probably go around and maybe we could all tell. Let's do maybe one of our either favorite or scariest stories of the year, and something we maybe like a little prediction for the upcoming year, and then we could probably wrap it with that. Brent, you go first. Besides the Rams losing the Super Bowl.
Thanks, man.
Realistic projections only.
Moving on from that one. I think next year you're going to see more acquisitions where these big companies buy up these somewhat unknown companies that are heavily entrenched in data. I would say I could see somebody buying Clearview, but they may have too much baggage for anybody to buy. But I would think they would love to buy a company like a Clearview if they could get away with it. So I see more acquisitions, and I see at least one kind of blockbuster. Before, I guess it just came out last night about Oracle buying this company Cerns or something like that for $30 billion, and that's all about data, medical data. And I'm not putting that potential acquisition in the, what we've usually discussed, but I'm just saying we're going to see some big acquisitions, and they're going to be mostly around data, even more than we've seen in the past. So that's my big thing. And what was that other one? Life 360. I wouldn't be surprised if somebody buys them. One of the big guys buys them. Worst story. I'm not going to do one worst story. I'm just going to say the Clearview wing of stories every week. A company I'd never heard of before we started doing this. And every week there's something that comes up with those guys. And I don't see that changing unless something dramatic happens where they get, a huge fine or, somebody goes to jail. Other than that, yeah. And the good story, I think it's just more people, generally speaking, are paying attention to what's going on with their privacy. And I give credit to Apple to, I think, raising the awareness, even though, as we kind of just discussed, sometimes it feels like it may be 2 steps forward, 1 step back. But before the iOS 14, I think it's 14.5 update, there wasn't a lot of a huge amount of discussion from regular people around privacy, but that's definitely a big change. And I think the trend is only going to take off for next year and the years beyond for that. So that's kind of my takeaways.
Yeah, I think looking back, one of the worrying trend is the two-sided business models. Unfortunately, I think they're going to stick, where they'll show all the ads, they'll surveil, and all that will continue. On top of it, they're also asking you to pay if you don't want to see ads, but that doesn't mean they're not tracking and you're not being surveilled. I think that two-sided business models that only benefit the provider and not the end user, that is the scary part to me. And because it is that bad and it benefits the producer, or in this case the surveillance companies, I'm expecting that to go mainstream and everyone follow that, because you're creating two streams of revenue, 2 business models that only benefit you, right? So benefit these surveillance companies. So that's a disturbing part to me, and unfortunately I see that going. Now, what else do I see next year? I may have a maybe slightly opposite take, or hopefully opposite take to what Brent said, which is I'm hoping that FTC will develop a backbone and block some of these acquisitions. And again, I'm wishful, but again, I'm hoping that some of the acquisitions that Brent is talking about will not be permitted because you're getting into that monopoly or duopoly. We have a lot of duopolies out there. I'm not holding my breath on it, but I'm hopeful on that front. But another aspect I'm really hopeful on is US coming up with a privacy law like GDPR. That will take care of a lot of things. But then again, you're asking someone to come up with something where their interests may not be aligned. There is probably a lot of lobby money floating around, and that probably caused the delays. But the fact that FTC has been talking about it and all of that gives me some hope. There have been some recent blockages of some of the acquisitions that makes me hopeful. But I certainly know that there are a lot of people, especially big tech, going against FTC. So I'm rooting for FTC in this case to block some of these acquisitions that ended up creating some of these monopolies and duopolies. And of course, if there is a privacy law that comes in US, then privacy comes to the forefront. It becomes mainstream, and it becomes an important topic that puts users in the front.
I think you guys had two pretty good ones. FTC would probably be my wish for 2022, but realistically, I'd peg the odds pretty low. I mean, FTC action I think is more likely. Any kind of like law that goes through government seems almost virtually impossible to happen nowadays. So I have a little bit less faith there. I think based on what Brent was saying in terms of acquisitions, maybe Clearview and Palantir are probably the match made in heaven, two government-based organizations. But at the end of the day, Clearview is going to be untouchable. If U.S. government is their customer, U.S. government is not going to lose that customer. So if anything, it's like a shield of if Clearview is doing the bad work, then the government won't get in trouble because you're just a customer and they take all the shots in the media versus the government doing it. So there's kind of that aspect of it. But in general, I think Brent hit the nail on the head. After that iOS 14.5 update or whatever, privacy conversations just skyrocketed and like awareness. And I think just the knowledge about it kind of extracted. So I'm hoping that, the more user education in terms of what privacy really means, why it's important to people, and how they can kind of protect themselves, and easy tools to use become more dominant in the upcoming year. I think people will see that there is a real business model there, and a lot of people that are concerned will choose that as one of the kind of the deciding factors when purchasing, software or hardware or something along those lines. So yeah, I'm not too far off in either of those aspects. I would say my favorite story was probably, I think it has to be the anal print story. There's no way that wasn't the funniest thing and like the weirdest thing we've ever heard. Like that has to be by a mile. I don't know how neither of you guys mentioned that one, but that is Brent can't even control himself. He's turning red, and so that has to be my funny story of the year. But what do you call it? Yeah, I guess that's pretty much it. I think we'll keep getting forward. I think we're doing a decent job in terms of telling people, spreading the good word of privacy and kind of news about what's going on. I think we've got really big plans for 2022. We want to try to create a little bit more content around privacy awareness, more importantly, actionable tips and tools and plans people can use to implement in their day-to-day life, and how to kind of evaluate privacy policies and things like that. We'll come up with a lot of different ways to just have a little bit more educational material rather than just weekly shows like this. So stay tuned for 2022, big year for the Watching Privacy Show. And for the last time of 2021, adios. Like, share, subscribe. I think we're still at 60 something. We need to hit 100 to make this URL get fixed. And so 40 more by the end of the year would be a nice little Christmas present. And I think that is it. Any last words, Brent and Raju? Or have a good year. Merry Christmas.
Yeah. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays. All right. Adios, folks. See you next year.